What is going on, guys? One more bringing guys a brand new Busch Gardens video. To start off, thank you guys so much for the love and support on the last video talking about the on-ride effects of Busch Gardens. I've enjoyed making these videos and they've been doing well, but that video just surpassed all my expectations. So thank you guys so much for the love and support. And if you haven't seen a video, after you watch this video, make sure to go check out that one. And I mentioned in the last video, not every video am I going to be complaining about the park or critiquing it. And when I was thinking about what topic I wanted to do for this, I was looking at my list and I was like, these are all kind of critiques and complaints. So I decided, let's just talk good about the park for an episode. Because there is a lot of good to talk about when it comes to the park. I feel like it gets lost in a lot of the negativity. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about how the old country is returning to Busch Gardens. And if you're wondering, what does that mean? Well, if you're not like a super strong Busch Gardens aficionado, you would know the park used to be called Busch Gardens, the Old Country, because it is based around the United Kingdom and London and all the countries in the park. And as the park has grown over the years, they've kind of separated from that and they lost the name. They became Busch Gardens Williamsburg, then Busch Gardens Europe for a little bit of time, and then they went back to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. But I think a lot of people noticed around the 40th anniversary back in 2015, the old country started to rear its little head around again. They had a bunch of historical little things around the park and a lot of it mentioning the old country. All the fans loved the old country. And I think Busch Gardens was like, there's still a hunger for the brand of the old country. So if you're in the park now, there's so much merchandising ever since 2015 that has the old country written on it. With that, I think, we can look at it and like, that's nice. That's cool. They're honoring the past more than they have been for the past years. But it seems now, since the return of the full park experience after the pandemic, that we're getting a little bit of the old country back at Busch Gardens, which is super exciting. If you know me, and I know a lot of other Busch Gardens fans share this point of view as well, the park has kind of an identity crisis right now. Part of it seems like they're trying to hold on to the old country, but there's another part that's just they're trying to play catch up with other amusement parks and just trying to have the biggest rides, not really fitting into the story of the park. Because like theme parks, which Busch Gardens is, not an amusement park, theme parks generally try to tell a story as you walk through. And Busch Gardens did that with the old country. Over the years, it seemed they started to strive away from that with the introduction of the newer, just top-of-the-line rides, which I love, but it just strives away because Busch Gardens has never been a park about rides. It's a park about the experience and experiencing the old country, learning those stories in a fun way with rides. We're just going to kind of talk about some things that the park has done, at least to me, that I've realized as like, okay, they're starting to take some steps back into the right direction. They started repainting everything. So like, how does that affect the old country? It just revamped the park. The park needed to liven itself back up because it's supposed to be a celebration of the old country. When they repainted Germany and they repainted Alpengeist and they fixed the painting on the polished chariot and Griffin, that was like a first step. Like, okay, they're painting. But one thing that was really cool, and if you have seen any documentaries around the 40th anniversary about the park, they used to have a lot of live entertainment in the park. And you're like, oh, of course, they got Celtic Fire, whatever show that they're going to run in the Globe Theater, which right now is American Jukebox. And you had the show in the Fest House. No. They had character actors walking around the park. Like, if you go to Disney, Universal, and you had the actors walking around in the costumes, they had that. They had like the Three Musketeers. They had just different people, different occupations in the England part of the park. Long story short, they had characters all over the park that you would meet and greet and have that experience. And I've noticed that they've started to bring that back. And it's not every day, and it's not all the time you'll see them, but they've slowly started to bring them back. It immerses you in experience. It makes the park feel more alive rather than just these countries just kind of sitting there and saying, this is England, this is France, this is Germany. Now you have people embracing that role. Unlike this in Universal, the employees, even though they are called cast members, they really don't embrace a role when they're doing their stuff. One thing, and I would like to see the employees kind of take on that more of a acting role. That's a lot of boxes to get checked, but let's just be happy that they're starting to bring it back. And they had the Three Musketeers dueling out in France one day, and just seeing that, knowing that that was before my time when they had that live entertainment, and seeing it back, and I saw them in person a couple times, and it was just like, this is what it's all about. And now, if you go, I know especially through Ireland, sometimes in France, and other parts of in addition to the live entertainment at the stages in theaters, they also have like these little mini stages in the lands where they'll have these other bands that sing Irish folk music. But they had a band in France that was playing music, and it was just so awesome to see Busch Gardens also supporting these smaller artists and bands and really letting them showcase the music of these countries, which is what Busch Gardens is all about. It's about showcasing the old country. Because think about Epcot. It's literally the World Showcase where every country is kind of represented there, or many countries are represented. Busch Gardens does that with a focus on Europe, just like Busch Gardens Tampa has a focus on Africa. It's just been nice to see that come back, and other things that they've tried to do is they've really started to embrace the old when it comes to whatever they're doing next. Like Dark Coaster, they didn't have to connect it to Dark Castle, which was a Busch Entertainment installation, but they did, which is a good thing. It's a great thing. Tempesto, what I thought was really cool is they not just built Tempesto there. And I know a lot of fans have their opinions about Tempesto. Look, it's a fun ride. It's a pain to get in and out of, but it's a fun ride. But I really enjoyed how they integrated the story of Tempesto's stunt into Festa Italia rather than just it being there. Now, the one that kind of feels like the oddball is Pantheon. Because I think Pantheon belongs in Italy, but I think personally it should have been in more Italy proper. Now, where would they have put the entrance in Italy proper? I don't know. It's off in its own little thing anyway. It's all in its own little space. So, you know what? It's doing fine. And we all love Pantheon. It put Busch Gardens on the map for a lot of roller coaster enthusiasts because it's a world-class coaster. And when it comes to old defunct rides, the park is starting to re-embrace a lot of that, even just in the merchandise. You know, you have Drakenfire, which is getting some love, which we'll talk about in another video. There's another ride they had called Questor, which in Glissade, that they are giving merch about, which, unless you're like a diehard Busch Gardens fan, you don't know what that is. We've also had to say goodbye to some things of the old country, like Da Vinci's Cradle. That was one of the marquee rides when the Italy section opened up in the 80s, and unfortunately we lost that. But fortunately, on the flip side, we kept the Flying Machine, because the Flying Machine remained just kind of sitting there in limbo for so long. People were wondering, are they going to take it out? Because that was an old ride that was there when Italy was first built. It had served its time if it was time for it to go. And people were like, you know, the park was getting back to their regular operations and Flying Machine wasn't touched. Suddenly people started working on it and they got it back going, which to me is awesome because that's like a ride that is a historic ride at the park. Even though it's such a small one, it really holds a lot of the park's history because it's not an opening day ride because Italy didn't exist at the time, but it feels like one, kind of like Le Scoot. Le Scoot is an opening day ride, and the beautiful thing about Le Scoot, to segue into that, is a few years ago, we got new boats, or they refurbished the boats, and then they redid the on-ride effects on the inside with the chainsaw and the spinning wheel. It was so nice to see the moving parts in there and to see it looking so cool and the thing like coming down to your head to almost like chop your head off. It really was nice to see them put a lot of work into an opening day ride that they could just lay dormant and say it's a law flume ride, don't need to be special, and just have it be that way. But no, they took the extra step and actually went and fixed the ride, which was awesome, and I love it. It looks beautiful too with the paint job and everything. And then we have other rides that they've touched up, like Loch Ness Monster, which is always, they just like replaced a piece of track on it recently, and they have committed to keeping that ride open as long as they can because it is a world-class coaster, because it is the only coaster in the world that operates with 2 interlocking loops. You want to keep that open because that's especially for roller coaster enthusiasts or ace, that's a draw for a lot of people to come and ride the only operating coaster in the world with interlocking loops. Other coasters tried and they're closed today, but Loch Ness Monster still goes. It's fulfilling because even though I wasn't alive during the old country days, and I've really only been at Busch Gardens in the newer days, especially as I became more of a Busch Gardens diehard fan over recent years, I always had this yearning for the old country style. The fact that the park still has that original feel, the in-house feel, that everything is done here, even though SeaWorld, the big corporation that owns it, does get their fingers into it sometimes. But it's just beautiful to see the park embrace its old identity again and really do stuff for the fans that they haven't done before. And there's still some things that they need to work on, like the food. The food, in my opinion, has kind of lowered in a little bit of quality post-pandemic, because if you know, they would typically make all the food in-house. Everything's made there. Any pizza dough made in-house. Any spaghetti or tomato sauce made in-house. Homegrown, like it was all that. They didn't get anything frozen, but I don't know if that's the case now. I'd put that up to question, but I'm not going to say it is or it's not. I don't know, because I don't think that's the thing that they want to keep. Their whole shtick was having food that was different. They still do have food that's different, but not as much of a variety as they used to, except for the smokehouse. Cause, oh Lord, the smokehouse is so good. And I know I'm repeating myself, but the fact that they just keep fixing stuff in a park and not try to tear it down and add something new, which a lot of parks attempt to do, and you wouldn't really blame Busch Gardens if they did, because technically that would be the best way to handle things. But there is that group inside the park. Yes, we want to keep pushing the park forward. but also we got to respect of the past, because we are not in a usual amusement park. We are a theme park, and we want to set ourselves apart from the rest. We want to have our name talked about in conversation with the other big theme parks around the world. I think they've started to learn from the fans. It doesn't have to be a big ride to bring them in. Small little changes and improvements are enough, and I can attest to that. I'm part of the Facebook groups. You know, I'm a diehard fan myself. You don't need the biggest and best to draw us in. Small improvements go a long way. And the fact that Busch Gardens now is finally at its full operating capacity, I think we're going to start seeing more integration of that back into the parks. You know, with the park being able to be run mostly year-round now, they have opened themselves up to even celebrate more stuff than just the old country and the countries that they've done. They've really taken the idea that Busch Gardens is a park displaying cultures from around the world, and they've really embraced that with these year-round events, and I'm enjoying it so much. The only thing, and I said it in the vlog, summer nights gotta go. Summer nights gotta go. Look, have your concerts, that's nice. Have your fireworks, they're beautiful. But if you're a Busch Gardens fan, you'll know what I'm talking about. Illumina Nights. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up on YouTube. The soundtrack is on iTunes. It was an original music piece that they did for the fireworks show at the nighttime during the summer, which has now become Summer Nights, which is more pop music and all that, which I love pop music. It's my job. There's a time and a place, and to me, Busch Gardens is not that place, especially when it starts at like 4 o'clock and you're hearing like Dua Lipa. Look, I love Dua Lipa, but I don't want to hear while I'm in Italy at Busch Gardens. I'm sorry. And that's my personal opinion. And I heard Cake by the Ocean one day. I was like, look, Cake by the Ocean is one of my favorite songs in the world. I don't want to hear while I'm in Ireland. And Illumina Nights was original music based off of classics, embraced in a new way. And there's a song that I consider to me the Busch Gardens theme song that is part of that, and it's really awesome to listen to. But to me, the number one thing to get the old country back, get rid of Sesame Street Land. I hate Sesame Street Land. I'll talk about that in a different video. But one thing that, some things that they've also improved that have really invigorated the old country, the train. They repainted the trains, the skyline. They fixed the skyline, and they improved it. They're doing a lot of in-house fixes to these old opening day attractions. Keep the park alive and keep the park feeling like the old country. And I'm not going to say that Busch Gardens needs to go 100% back to the old country. They don't need to. That time passed. But to stray away from that identity, which felt like they tried to do in the span from like 2009, 2008 to about 2014. And that time, it felt like to me they were getting rid of it. Like the Big Bad Wolf went away. I mean, that was, again, we'll make a video talking about that. There's other videos on YouTube if you want to go ahead and learn about it. There's great videos online documenting why Big Bad Wolf had to shut down since 2015, and that fan fire that came from the old country merch and just being spoken about. It seemed like they were like, okay, there's a hunger for this, and we need to capitalize on the hunger. It's a business move. They're not doing it for the fans. They're doing it because it's good business, and it's okay because that's what you're supposed to do. As a business worker, you do what works. But at the end of the day, what makes that dollar sign is what's going to be the answer. But yeah, if you're a Busch Gardens fan and you've noticed some of the old country stuff coming back, let me know what you think about it. I just want to take this video and just talk about the good things about Busch Gardens and what they've been doing, because I've harped on them the past 3 videos, kind of critiquing them, and I'm going to continue to do that in more videos. But I wanted to not be all negative. We had to have positivity. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you hadn't already. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that bell button down below so you are notified every single time I upload a brand new video to the channel. Make sure to check out all the links in the description, and make sure to go check out my other Busch Gardens videos. And I know I was all over the place in this video, but when you're not talking about one topic and critiquing one topic, I was just kind of all over the place thinking about different things in the park that I've really loved and have a passion for seeing again. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Will Morris, and I'm out.